From the outside, a cult and a community can look like the exact same thing. It is a lot of people dressing alike, maybe doing embarrassing things together. It can be kind of indistinguishable. The main difference is that in a cult, in order for you to belong to the group, you do what they tell you. And in the community, you can be yourself and still belong. A cult trades belonging for conformity, and a community values each person's individuality and lets each person bring their full selves and still belong to the group. The thing is, the line between the two, a cult and a community, is not always clear. There are communities that look like cults, but when you actually look into them, they're perfectly respectful of their members' individual identities. More concerning, especially in the online, like personal development world, there are creators, personalities, people who use the language of community. But when you look into what they're actually doing, they're using a lot of culty tactics in the way that they're building the group. So I'm going to talk about three aspects of bringing people together and how they show up in cults versus communities, so that if you were building a community, you don't accidentally build a cult. I'm cutting in here from the future. If you clicked on this video, you might be expecting like a fun video about cults. So I wanted to add in this like disclaimer that this video is actually pretty serious. I think that we're used to talking about cults from an entertainment perspective, but I don't know, I take them pretty seriously. I don't even like when people say like, oh, it's a cult brand, or they use the word cult to refer to like their group of friends as like a joke or something like that. I think the word means something, and I think it's pretty serious. I'm not the cult police. You can use language however you want to use it, but I just want to put that into context for this video. The examples I'm using in this video are, historic cults that most people would believe to be cults. But right now in our society, there are people electing politicians that are taking away their rights. Those people are in a cult. There are people spending $50,000 that they do not have to go on like some mastermind retreat because some creator told them that's the only way to grow their business. Those people are in a cult. There are people going to church and giving like a portion of their income to a pastor that owns a private jet. Those people are in a cult. Right now, there are people using these tactics to manipulate people, to isolate them from their families, and to really ruin people's lives. That's why I kind of take it more seriously than you might expect. So I hope this video is interesting, more interesting than it is super serious, but I wanted to address that up front in case you're looking for something different. If you're building a community, you're asking people to give you power. When you're inviting people to something, you're asking them to trust you, you're asking them to show up for you and show up for the other people who are there, and you're asking them to allow you to create an experience for them. And that is a form of power. Your role as a community leader should be to take that power that people are giving to you and find multiple ways to redistribute that power back into the group. What cult leaders do is they take the power that's been given to them by their members and they find ways to turn it into even more power. So the extreme example is in the Jonestown cult.
Fail to follow my advice, you'll be sorry. You'll be sorry.
It was a church slash cult started by Jim Jones, where little by little he was taking more and more power from the group that he was gathering. He made everyone move to a different country. He was controlling who could marry who, what people were doing for work. He was controlling everyone's money. Little by little, he was controlling so much of their lives that it resulted in them drinking Kool-Aid, and over 1,000 people died in that cult. That is like the extreme of what it looks like if you're taking all the power to yourself, and the way to belong in a group is to only do what one person is telling you to do. So here's what to do instead with your power as a leader of a community. First, I think it's really important to include multiple voices in what you're doing. So if you're building a community, if you're building a group, invite guest speakers so that multiple people are talking about the topics that you're gathering people around. Create small groups so that the people in the community can organize themselves and they can talk to other people who are their peers. Your job is really to build the structures that allow people to talk to each other, not just to like wait to hear what you're going to say. And similarly, when you're inviting people in, it's important to give them reasons to join that are not just about you. So especially people who build a membership or build a community after being like a social media creator, the first thought is to like, okay, I'm going to build this membership and give people more access to me and make it more about me and the content that I'm making. But I would invite you to consider, how can you build something that is, instead of it being about you, which first of all puts a lot of pressure on you, how can it be something that is about the people who are joining and about the ideas behind your content and the common goals of the people who you're inviting in? How can you make it about them and their journey and use you and your content just as a filter to get the right people in? You want to like decenter yourself as much as possible as the pole for the community that you're building. Each of us is at the center of this really complicated Venn diagram of all the groups and communities that we are a part of or have been a part of. That's something that healthy communities embrace and celebrate about each of their members. So if you think about your own connection with others and all the communities that you're a part of, maybe you have a group of friends from college and a different group of friends from high school. Maybe there's a group of friends who are your coworkers, even if you only see them at work. And then maybe on your free time, you have like a sports league that you're a part of or a trivia night. All of those kind of groups that you're a part of, they're all like each a separate small part of what makes you and what makes your identity as a unique person. And that's a really good thing. And that is like what makes each of us who we are. And often in cults, a group will force a member to choose them over the other communities that they're a part of. And when you do that, you're denying a part of your member's identity. Cults try to get you to hand over your entire identity to them. And that's something that you want to avoid if you're building a community. So, for example, Scientology, they discourage connections that are outside of the church. And they even have this formal rule that's called disconnection, which is like anyone who's not supportive of whatever they're doing in the church, you're meant to like cut that person off. And that results in people who stop talking to their families and their friends, and they kind of isolate themselves and only identify with Scientology. Scientology is also notorious for tying up all of their members' time so that they're spending all of their time within the church. They also find ways to charge people money so that they're tying up all their money. So little by little, they're like controlling every part of someone's life, which is, in a healthy community, something like that would never happen. So thinking about how to cultivate healthy allegiance in a community, I think it's really important that if you're building a community, you're not disparaging other groups who might be competitors to you or other activities that your members might be interested in and might be doing. Secondly, thinking about like your members' time. It's important to make ways for your members to participate, even if they don't have a ton of time to dedicate to the community. So don't build programs or community activities that require all of your members' time and that are inherently gonna exclude people who have kids or who have full-time jobs or who might not have a ton of time to dedicate to the community. People should be able to participate in the community at different levels depending on how much time they have. And lastly, money. I think it's important to find an amount to charge for your community if you're building a paid group that feels fair to you and the work that you're putting in and you and your team, and also feels fair to your members. Your members should not be going into debt to feel like they belong to your community. So I think it's really important to balance the work that you're putting in and the value that you're able to bring to people with what you're requiring of them monetarily, so that you're building a community that feels balanced and that doesn't have to use really sleazy sales tactics to get the right amount of members. At a core level, people join communities so that they can grow in some way. If everyone in a given group brings the same exact strengths and skills and haircut, and they agree on every single thing that's happening in the community, then you're losing the benefit of coming together with other people in the first place. Like, you're not coming together to be the same together. That's really boring. You're coming together to create some kind of friction that's going to help you grow, both as an individual and as a group. Like, you're building a type of a world together that is towards the future that you're envisioning. If the group is forcing everyone to be the same in order to belong, then you're limiting a lot of the cross-pollination that can happen when people are allowed to be themselves. Real belonging comes from embracing each person's difference. So members might have diverse perspectives and backgrounds and neurodivergence and different like rhythms of participating in the community. And a healthy community makes space for people to show up in their own way while still finding ways to grow together. It's the friction between how different everyone is, but how everyone maybe has the same idea for the future or like want to grow in the same direction. Like, that's the ideal kind of balance that a community has. What it doesn't look like is Heaven's Gate.
We had to have a structure, and that structure then immediately became an infringement on doing what I want to do when I want to do it. This is structured, and I love it.
This was the cult that got their members to really erase their individuality. So they had them wear identical clothes, have identical haircuts, and even like they called all the members the same name. So the members were each expected to suppress anything that made them distinct. And if you know anything about Heaven's Gate, that also led to tragedy for those members. So if you're building a community, here's what it can look like to celebrate the difference within your members. First, be really careful using jargon that excludes members because they don't understand what you're saying. It's totally okay to have like your own language for your community, but it's also important to build like a path for new members to, be into the group. So if you are going to have certain words that are unique to the group, what does the process of like getting up to speed on that language look like for new members? Secondly, make sure to highlight members who are different from each other in age, in race, in point of view. So as community leaders, a big part of our role is to celebrate members and to show other members what people are doing within the community. And it sometimes is easy to fall into highlighting and celebrating a lot of the same kind of thing. I think it's important to make an effort to diversify the people who you're talking about and the people who you're highlighting in the community as a way to highlight that difference is important to the community. And then lastly, this is a subtle one, but it's a really important one. I think it's important to attract community members more based on common goals and journeys instead of based on identity. So, for example, if you're building a community for women who are 25 to 35, that's an example of building a community based on identity, versus if you're building a community for people who want to write their first novel within the next 12 months. With the second option, where you're basing it on a member journey and a member goal, you naturally end up building a community that's a lot more diverse, and you end up bringing people together who actually have a lot more to say to each other, and building a community that is tighter and works better together. So here's a shortcut to figuring out if a group or community program that you're building is leaning more culty or community. The vibes of a community is always like, you belong because of who you are. It doesn't mean the community is a free-for-all and everything is allowed, but you have inherent value as a member of the community regardless of what you do. In a cult, it's more like you belong if you do XYZ, or if you give up who you are. So that is like the main way to put everything that you're doing through the lens of like, is it culty or is it community-y? As community leaders, our job is to design the spaces that respect each person's time, attention, their personal choice, so that the people who come to the community can grow together without actually losing themselves and who they are. Everything in a community is an invitation and not a prescription. That makes communities way harder to lead than cults, but that is not a good reason to build a cult.